Hello and welcome back to Memories of a Musician. I'm your host, Vito DeSalvo, and once again we have a great program for you this evening featuring a young lady by the name of Gina Morgano. Now, if you've watched my podcast before and you've watched it to the very end, at the very end there are credits, and you will see Gina Morgano's name there under the title of production consultant. And Gina, whom I've known for quite a while, helped me really get started putting this podcast together with the programs needed and different aspects of it. And I occasionally call on her to ask some questions about certain things. So she's been helpful in putting this together. I met Gina through her mother, Marianne, and Marianne at the time was dating, she's now married too, but she was dating a very dear friend of mine, Ken Kovac. And a lot of you who have watched this program know Ken Kovac because he's, first of all, was a guest on the program himself several months ago, and has been mentioned as a bass player, and he's been mentioned in several of the podcasts that we've had guests on the program. So I want to show you a picture, and this is from 2021, and there's Gina and myself there. And we were at a place in Carnegie, Pennsylvania called Cefalos, and I was presenting my Symphony Number 1, an organization that I belong to called E65, and then also outside guests were invited. We had a very nice evening, and Gina was there. And here's a picture here with Gina and her mom and Kenny Kovac. And then my wife, Lana's in there, and myself. And so this was all on that same evening when I presented that symphony. When she was in San Francisco studying opera there, I believe that's the first time that I had heard of her. And I don't know exactly what year that was, but that's when I found out about Gina. I put together a montage. And this is kind of interesting because the music is a song that I wrote actually for Lana in 1981, a long time ago, called Tu sei la mia vita, which means you are my life. And I wrote this song, and then I eventually recorded it several times with my band with different singers. First singer was Greg Grenick, then Ernie Pontier, and so forth. But then I did a SATB arrangement of it for choir. So that's soprano, alto, tenor, bass. And a very dear friend of mine asked the Mendelssohn Choir if they would perform this. They had a rehearsal, and this was the first rehearsal. We got one of my engineers there, Tim Milko, to engineer this. And it was just in someone's living room, and it was just certain members. I mean, it was maybe 30 or 35 members of the choir. It wasn't the whole choir. I'd like to play this for you. And in this, you're going to see Gina in a lot of different performance situations. So let's just watch this together. And there you go. Beautiful. And that was just the very first time they were reading through this piece. But and Gina, of course, was there and singing. And besides singing with the Mendelssohn, we're going to talk about this, but she also sings with the National Chorale, which you saw some pictures there. And we're going to talk about that as well. So before I bring her on, let me give you a little background about Gina. Gina Morgano is a professional singer, a TEDx speaker, and vocal confidence coach who believes that every voice matters. She helps people to love their voice and sing with courage so they can express themselves with confidence. An avid recitalist and cabaret artist throughout the country, Gina is a versatile vocalist whose singing styles range from classical, sacred, and musical theater to jazz, pop, and country. Gina is currently an alto in the professional corps of the Mendelssohn Choir of Pittsburgh, where she sings regularly with the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra at Heinz Hall for the Performing Arts. While living in New York, Gina sang at Carnegie Hall, Lincoln Center, 54 Below, the Laurie Beechman Theater, Don't Tell Mama, the Strand, and St. Patrick's Cathedral. She was also a dedicated soloist, chorister, and artist teacher with the National Chorale, the city's oldest all-professional symphonic chorus. Gina is a frequent national anthem singer, having performed for the Pittsburgh Pirates at PCN Park, the Pittsburgh Riverhounds and Riveters, the University of Pittsburgh, Duquesne University, NCAA March Madness, and more. As a speaker and educator, Gina blends her expertise as a performer with her holistic approach to the voice. She helps leaders, teams, and individuals open, trust, and expand their vocal impact. Her teaching experience includes the 92nd Street Y School of Music, the Professional Performing Arts School in New York City, and Oakland Catholic High School in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She currently maintains a small private online voice studio. Gina gave a TEDx talk at Point Park University titled Renewing Your Voice from the Inside Out. Your Voice Matters, and was recently selected as a presenter for the upcoming Fred Rogers Institute's Work of Fred Rogers Conference at St. Vincent College. Other favorite talks include Amplify Your Impact, How Strong Communicators Become Stronger Leaders, for the Northwestern Alumni Association, and Daring to Be Heard for Alpha Chi Omega Sorority. Gina hosts the Voice Space podcast and is the creator of the Practice Planner in the Create Your Cabaret online course. Through her work with organizations such as Sing for Hope and Vocal Ease, Gina strives to create a world of beauty for those who cannot easily access live performance. She is passionate about supporting veterans and regularly uses her voice to fundraise for causes she believes in. Born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Gina graduated with vocal honors from Northwestern University, BM, MSJ, and the San Francisco Conservatory of Music, where she got her Master of Music degree. Gina believes that curiosity and storytelling are the floodgates to empathy and compassion, and that sometimes the best way to use your voice is to listen. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's bring Gina onto the program. And there she is. Hi, Gina. How are you?
Hi, Vito. I'm well. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a pleasure to have you. I publicly thank you for all you did to help me get this whole podcast underway,
You're so welcome. It's such an amazing thing you've created.
Thank you. Thank you. I didn't know how long it was going to last, but you are episode 65. So yeah, we're we're hanging in there pretty good.
That's great.
So, Gina, let me ask you, when did you begin studying music? What was your first instrument? What was your inspiration to start a musical instrument?
You know, it's funny you asked me that today because last weekend I performed with a small treble choir from the Mendelssohn Choir with the Pittsburgh Ballet Theater in their production of A Midsummer Night's Dream. And that got me remembering how I got into this in the first place. When I was a toddler, my uncle got me tickets for the ballet. And my mom didn't want to take me. She thought I was too young. She thought I'd cry. I wouldn't sit still. And he insisted. And apparently I was mesmerized. And ever since I was a toddler and I went to that first ballet, it has been all music all the time. So I started taking piano lessons when I was very young, still a toddler. And then in school, I started playing instruments as they were offered, the violin and the clarinet. And I always sang in school choirs and things like that. And then eventually I shifted my focus to voice.
Very good, very good. And you attended Interlochen as a violin major and then changed your focus to voice. What precipitated that change?
So when we were at Interlochen, we went in with a major. I was a violin major, and we were allowed to take so many elective classes. And I decided to take a small group voice class. And I remember that we learned Caro mio ben, which is everybody's first Italian art song and aria. And I loved it so much. And as I mentioned, I'd always sang in school, but this was the first time that I really studied voice. And there was a girl in my cabin who played Cinderella in Into the Woods. She was a musical theater major at Interlochen. I always loved musicals, and I looked at her up on that stage, and I was taking voice lessons, and I decided that's what I really loved. So I came home and I told my mom that I wanted to take private voice lessons. And she said, whoa, 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 I'm paying for way too many lessons right now. But I was pretty adamant. So I convinced her to let me take a group voice class at the CLO Academy. And she said, do the group class for a year. And then if you really want to do voice, you can switch to voice, but you'll have to get rid of something else. So I did start taking voice lessons with the late, great Stephen Totter.
Okay. Okay. And in high school, you took private voice lessons, studied vocal health, participated in your high school musicals, and took an orchestra trip to Carnegie Hall. Tell us about that.
Yes. I loved my time at Mount Lebanon High School. It has such a rich performing arts program, and I was so fortunate to be able to participate in so many different ways. So officially, I was in orchestra. That was my main class. And I remember that right before I got to high school, the orchestra had taken a trip to Carnegie Hall. And they were invited to go back, but it was a lot of work for our orchestra director, Mr. Vogel. And he kept saying, no, never again, like been there, done that. And we kept begging him, oh, please, oh, please. And then finally, for our senior year, we went. So that was really the highlight of everything. And then as far as singing, I wasn't officially in the school choir, but I did sing with the school choir. I would go in on my lunch break and things like that. And I did the musicals every year. So freshman year, we did South Pacific. Sophomore year, we did Lil Abner. Junior year, we did The King and I got to play Anna Leon Owens. And then senior year, the musical was Oliver, and I played Widow Corney. And the thing was that Nancy, who's the lead in Oliver, is a big belt role. And my voice teacher was very on me about my vocal health. I had had some issues earlier in high school. I was cheerleading and I was doing all of my college auditions. And he was very adamant that I take care of my voice and I not do anything that might strain it or jeopardize my college auditions because I was singing classically for those auditions.
In other words, forget the cheerleading.
Yes. He told me to decide whether I wanted to be a singer or a cheerleader. One of the most difficult decisions of my life, but I think I made the right one.
That's right. I understand. That's interesting. And you mentioned about the orchestra, and I know that you had a very good friend, and this brings another connection to you and I, is through your very good friend Sarah Silver, right? She played violin. She went on to become a professional violinist, and her father and mother both string players. Her mother a violinist, her dad a violist, and her father Paul Silver, whom I met through your mom and through Ken, was my editor for my symphony, Paul Silver. And he was a violist with the Pittsburgh Symphony for, I think, 38 years. And so we have that connection too with the Silvers. It's interesting,
Yeah.
all these circles that happen,
Actually, Sarah's mother was my first violin teacher. She was an elementary school string teacher.
Sure, right. And you mentioned Mr. Vogel. I knew Bob Vogel quite well because I was the orchestra director in West Mifflin when he was at Mount Lebanon, and we would meet all the time at the PMEA events and things like that. So I knew Bob very well too. It's very interesting. A great guy. We had a lot of fun together.
He's wonderful.
Yeah. So at what point do you think music really became your passion? You mentioned already, I mean, from day one, when you saw that first ballet, that, you were hooked, right?
I was hooked. And I'm really lucky that my family supported the arts. My family loves the arts. I have extended relatives who are musicians, but nobody in my immediate family growing up. And my grandfather would play classical music all the time. So it was always on in the background. I was exposed to it. My mom would take me to the ballet and she'd take me to musicals. And I think just being in a family that loved and appreciated the arts instilled my love and appreciation for it, but also supported me in something that I love.
So important, it really is important to get that support. And you're lucky you did have the family that really appreciated the arts like that. I agree with you 100%. And so you ended up going to Northwestern University as a vocal performance major, and were part of the musical theater program there, and were also a journalism major. How did you manage all of these at the same time?
Good question. It was definitely a lot. I knew going into college that I wanted to have a double major. I wanted my music degree and then something else. And when I was applying, Northwestern had a short-lived program called the Music and Journalism program. And I think that it was intended to put you on the path of being an arts critic. But I never really had any interest in that. I was simply interested in the two separate degrees, the music degree and the journalism degree. So I was pre-admitted to have my master's in journalism.
Okay.
And I wanted to drop it. I really did. And my family was pretty adamant that I continue with it because it was a lot. So at Northwestern, you enter as either a voice major or a theater major. And then from there, you audition for the musical theater program. So it essentially was like having three majors: my voice major, my musical theater certificate, and then my journalism master's.
Wow. So that's a master's degree in journalism from Northwestern.
Yes.
Okay. Wow. So I have, and this is an undergraduate recital, this picture here. Is that what that is? Where is that?
Yes, that's Northwestern in Lutkin Hall. And that was my junior. Was that my junior recital or my senior recital? I'm trying to remember based on the dress, and I don't remember.
That's funny. Yeah, but it was certainly a recital. I just have that it was an undergraduate recital, right? And then I do have a graduate recital, and I have the year 2012 with this photo.
Yes. So that was from San Francisco Conservatory of Music.
Right. So after your work at Northwestern, you attended the San Francisco Conservatory of Music, where you were a vocal performance major, music theater, and early music, a church soloist, and you switched from soprano to mezzo soprano. Is that right?
Yes. So at SFCM, San Francisco Conservatory of Music, they had a vocal performance degree. And then from there, they had all of these different programs that you could audition for. So I auditioned for the musical theater program and I got to do some musicals. I did Amalia in She Loves Me. We did a staged production of Myths and Hymns by Adam Gettle, which is a song cycle. And then I did the early music program. I got really involved in singing Baroque and early music. And I did Alcina by Handel. And that was done at concert pitch, at modern pitch, instead of at Baroque pitch, which would have been almost a half step lower. And so it sat very, very high in my voice. And I had always struggled with my vocal technique in undergrad school and in graduate school. Things never felt easy. It always felt like a struggle. I always felt like I was straining and I was tight. I never really got my breath support under me. And so my teacher, Sylvia Anderson, said, well, you have to drop this production. You cannot sing this role.
Wow.
And I said, wait, no, it's the title role. I want to do it. And she said, no, you can't do it. It's too high for you. And I was very stubborn and I was adamant that I was not dropping the show. And she said, well, then you need to figure it out. And so she brought me back to basics. She had me relearn how to warm up. And she really taught me my vocal technique in that last semester of graduate school. And through that process, we realized that I'm actually a mezzo soprano. I'm a high mezzo. I can flex to soprano often, but I approach my voice like a mezzo soprano voice. And so I was trying to approach it like a high light soprano and things weren't working. So I'm so grateful for that experience.
Sure. That's important to know where you should be, right?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So that's great. And what a great experience between Northwestern and then San Francisco and all that you did in just those two schools, those two universities. Unbelievable. So then you left San Francisco for New York City. Please tell us why did you head to the Big Apple?
Well, I always wanted to experience living in New York. And when I was at Northwestern and I was in the musical theater program, most of my friends planned to move to New York right after college.
Okay.
And quite frankly, I was very jealous and envious. I wanted to go with them, but I was staying to finish my master's in journalism. And as I mentioned, I didn't really feel like my technique was under me. I knew that I wanted to go and get my master's in vocal performance. And so I did not go straight to New York, but I moved to San Francisco with the intention of always moving to New York when I was finished with my schooling.
I see. In New York, you met Andrew Byrne?
Yes.
The singing athlete, brain-based voice training. Tell us about this nervous system regulation.
Yes. So Andrew is my longtime voice teacher. And when I was studying in San Francisco, a classmate of mine had already lived in New York. And she said, well, he's the guy you want. You want to take a lesson with him. So as soon as I got to New York, I met Andrew and he changed my life. He would never assert to be a medical doctor, but he has more knowledge of the human body than any doctor I've ever met in my life.
Wow.
And his brand, the name of his book is The Singing Athlete. And so what he does is he does all of these drills, muscle testing, breathing exercises, vestibular balance exercises, eye drills, all sorts of things that help you to calm your nervous system, to activate your vagus nerve, and to shut down your fight or flight response. And so the idea is that if we can calm the body and expand the body and strengthen the body, then the voice knows what to do. It's about calming down that threat response. And we have a lot of imbalances in our body. Maybe, I carry my purse on my right shoulder all the time, right? So that kind of knocks my posture out of whack, or I slouch over at the computer, right? We all have these different mobility patterns, and he can see them and assess them and make these really small shifts that make a huge difference in your singing.
I see. I wonder what he would have said about me playing the accordion for 60 years.
Probably a lot. I'm sure he'd have a lot of insight.
It wrecked my body pretty good. So you also worked at the Jan Waldman Studio, acting, career training, and later speaking.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Jen Waldman. Jen was an actor on Broadway, and she did national tours. She was in Wicked as Nessa Rose, and she was in Titanic. And then very early in her performing career, she switched her focus to coaching other actors. So that same friend from San Francisco recommended Andrew, and she recommended Jen. And I met Jen as soon as I moved to New York. And initially, I started taking classes with her. She had studio classes where you'd get up, you'd sing a song, you'd get coached on it. And then I started taking other classes with her. I took her preparing a role class many times, where you work in depth on one musical theater role. You pretty much learn the whole role inside and out. You learn how to analyze a script. You learn how to create your own process for learning a role. And that really refined my acting process and my acting technique. And then Jen also teaches mindset classes. She has one called Shift, where you're doing these little exercises, such as, how to practice faith over fear, things like that. She also did something called Artist Alliance, which was an incredible, very long session where we were doing a lot of inner work and self-awareness and really clarifying who we are as artists and our aesthetic and our tastes and how we're presenting ourselves to the industry, to the world, how to identify our values as artists. And now she has an online membership, I guess, called the Career Collective. And that is really helping artists to take agency in their careers. And she also is a speaker. So in addition to coaching actors, she now has a side of her business where she does keynotes and facilitates workshops with corporations.
Okay.
And she takes the skills that she's learned from the artistic world and applies it to the business world. So I learned how to create a keynote through her Big Ideas Lab with her podcast co-host, Peter Shepard. Their podcast is called The Long and the Short of It. And that really got me involved and interested in the speaking world. So she's sort of been my guru for all things that are not vocal technique.
Interesting. Wow, that's great. Interesting. And I want to show a photo. I have a photo of you and your mom together at Carnegie Music Hall. This is in 2004. Yeah, in fact, your mom's holding a program up there. Were you performing there then?
That was our high school trip, senior year.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's interesting. 2004. When did you graduate from high school?
2004.
That was it, huh? 2004. Mm-hmm. Wow. I hate to tell you, I graduated with my master's degree in 1975. Boy, that makes me feel old.
Oh, no.
Wow. That's great. Well, now we're going to talk, you have, first of all, you're in New York and you're doing all this, studying with, teachers and doing all this. And did you enjoy being in New York and the whole vibe of New York City? I mean, it is tremendous. I mean, I remember the times that I went there, I went there for pleasure several times with Lana, with friends, together. We'd just go up, fly up for a weekend to see a Broadway show and have dinner and things. But then I also toured and was in New York City and performed there several times. And, it's a really cool vibe. But I always said, I don't think I would want to live there, on any permanent basis. It was so crazy, I don't know. How did you handle all that? Living in Mount Lebanon, which is a very subdued kind of, community. I mean, it's not anything like, even Pittsburgh's nothing like New York, right? So.
I love New York so much. I love how alive the city is. I love how everything is there. So every new show is going to be in New York. Every book signing is going to be in New York. Every major concert tour is going to be in New York. All of the restaurants, all of the people, you run into people. I would be walking down the street and I would run into somebody from Mount Lebanon or from one of my schools. And it just feels like you're in it. You're in the middle of what's happening. You're in the know. And I love that. I love that so much. There's also an accessibility about New York in that I found people to be very approachable. You would take the elevator with a random celebrity. You would be crossing the street with a random celebrity. Everybody was there. Everybody was mingled and intertwined. Everybody had ambition. There was a level of excellence. I remember when I moved to the city, Ron Afif, a great guitarist, he said to me, you kind of expect excellence. You're actually surprised if somebody isn't amazing. The standard is just so high.
Yeah. And speaking of that standard being high, you worked with a Pittsburgher, David Budway, who's in New York now, and you did a couple shows with him in the cabaret setting and did some Christmas concerts. I have a photo. Let's see. It's right here. That's a photo of David Budway. He's a fantastic pianist. I know that. And you're singing, this is one of your Christmas shows, apparently, huh?
Yes. So
tell us about that experience. And then after, I'll show a little video of that.
Sure. So David and Ron actually play together all the time. They are very, very close. And David and I got to collaborate on these 2 Christmas shows at 54 Below. And I've known him my whole life. He's an extended relative. He's a cousin of mine.
Oh,
and yes. And he's just incredible. He's played with everybody, with Liza Minnelli and Hubert Laws and Christiane Knoll, and the list goes on and on and on and on. And he and his wife, Brianne, actually own Maureen's Jazz Cellar in Nyack, New York. It's named after his late sister, Maureen Budway, who was an incredible jazz singer.
Right.
So we finally got to do these Christmas concerts. And it was so special because he's the most generous guy. And he actually gave me a lot of Maureen's charts. And I got to sing a lot of her Christmas arrangements, which was so special. Yes.
So
we'd love to do it again, but he's in New York and now I'm in Pittsburgh, so it's hard.
Right. So this video has it's kind of a little bit of several different pieces, and one I was surprised he actually sings on with you in the duet, right?
Yes.
All right, let me play this video, then we can talk about it.
Someone holds me safe and warm. Horses prance through a silver storm. Figures dancing gracefully across my memory. It was grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me there to become. Oh, come, Emmanuel, 3 kings of Orient. These are a few of my favorite things.
Heps, who did steps that would stop the show in days that used to be. Through the air they keep flying like a duck that is dying. Instead of dance, it's choreography.
Neighbors might think,
Baby, it's bad out there.
say, what's in this drink?
You don't even drink.
No, I don't. I wish I knew how.
Your Atlas 54.
To break the spell.
Let's get out of here. Here comes the bill.
Even though you may not see him on his sleigh on Christmas Eve. Yes, Virginia, there's a Santa Claus. It's true if you believe. Hi, Santa.
There you go. That's cute. Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, David's an amazing pianist, and I didn't know he sang too, but that's great. That was cool.
Yeah, he's among the very best of the best. Truly a musical genius.
Yeah. I have another clip, a video called the Epiphany clip. Tell us what we're going to see here. What this is about.
Sure. So when I was living in New York, I started doing cabaret, and I had done classical recitals in school, and I realized that I missed it. I missed being on stage and doing my own shows. And it kind of dawned on me that cabaret wasn't so far off. It was different repertoire, but it was basically doing a recital, but getting to talk in between the pieces and interact with the audience. And so I did the Christmas concert. I did a show at Don't Tell Mama. And then I had this idea to do a show that at the time I called A Trip to the Library. And it was all songs from musicals based on books. And we did it at the Strand Bookstore, which is one of the most famous independent bookstores. It's a big bookstore in New York City. And upstairs, they have a rare book room, and it's all these beautiful leather-bound books. And at the time, it was the first musical performance that they ever had in their rare book room. So this is a song by Paul Gordon called The Epiphany.
All right, let me play it.
Mr. Knightley, Mr. Knightley, impossible and strange, yet obvious as daybreak, conclusive, indisputable and clear. My heart is now set free, and he must not pursue her when it's plain that he must marry me. Yes, I'm madly in love, and though it's not convenient, it's wonderful, it's torturous, and I think I may have lives. Yes, I'm sadly in love, but there's no guarantee that there might be but half a chance that he's in love with. Anything can happen. He's in love with. Stranger things have happened to me.
There you go. Very nice. Very nice. And so that was that upstairs room, huh?
Yes.
Yeah, I could tell with those books. Yeah. Very nice. That's cool. So tell us about your role with the National Chorale, which is a New York City based chorale. Let me ask you a question. Is there another national chorale in Washington, D.C.? Are they related or no?
No. National Chorale has always been in New York.
Okay.
And when I first moved to New York, this was another San Francisco to New York connection. There was a pianist, the late Lloyd Ariola, and he was in New York. I'd met him in San Francisco. And he said, there's a choral group called National Chorale, and they are looking for an alto. Why don't you audition? So this was October. I mean, I had just moved to the city in 2012, and it was my very first audition in the city, and I was accepted. Martin Josman was the founder, and at the time he was still conducting the organization, and he was up there at this point. National Chorale really had a heyday many decades before my time, but at this point, the organization was kind of just hanging on, and he was older and he was still conducting. And we did some performances. I remember we did a Bach piece, and we do Beethoven 9 a lot and things like that. And so I started singing with them. And then Martin passed away, and Everett McCorvey is now the artistic director. And Everett McCorvey runs the opera program at the University of Kentucky. And he is also the founder of the American Spiritual Ensemble. And with Everett McCorvey, the group really, I think, blossomed artistically. Yeah. Unfortunately, with funding, we don't get to perform very often. What they're known for is their yearly Messiah sing-in at Lincoln Center. And that is where the audience gets to be the choir, and they bring in soloists, and they bring in all of these different celebrity conductors to conduct each movement. And it's usually people who are in the New York art scene. So it's a really special night. And I've performed in the choir with National Chorale many, many times, but I've also soloed with them many times, including 3 times at Lincoln Center. Used to be Avery Fisher Hall, and then twice under the David Geffen Hall name. We've also done things like collaborate with the U.S. Soldiers Chorus and Army Field Band. So we've had a lot of cool opportunities with them. And as I was singing with them, one day they invited me to do a masterclass at PPAS, the Professional Performing Arts High School. And National Chorale runs the vocal department there. So they are the artists in residence, if you will. And at PPAS, there's different majors. Rosie's Kids does musical theater, and there's Alvin Ailey dance. And so National Chorale does the voice part. And unbeknownst to me, that was basically my audition, because there was an opening. Oh. And so then they hired me to be on the voice faculty. And I did that for about 5 years or so, really until the pandemic. And then we took things online for a year, and then I decided to stay in Pittsburgh. But that was so rewarding, because to be able to work with students at that level, I mean, they were singing Fauré Requiem, Mozart Requiem. They were doing these incredible opportunities in the city. And also our team was just really wonderful, and I was very close to the whole staff. I still am. I love those people. So National Chorale has been a huge, meaningful part of my life.
Yeah. Well, I have to tell you, you had sent me some videos, and some of them are complete concerts, which is, maybe an hour long of things. And I watched most of all of that. Of course, what I'm showing on the program are just little clips here and there, but I really enjoyed it. And the Maestro McCorvey, I mean, he's a terrific job. I mean, he's very, very good at what he does with conducting that group. I have a couple pictures. This one here, there's the group with an orchestra in front of them. And then I have this picture, which shows you right in the dead center of the photo. It shows you there singing. I wanted to show that. And this first clip I want to play, it's the recording. You guys did the whole work of Carmina Burana with the chorale. And of course, I used the very end, which the last poem. If you don't know, Carmina Burana is a series of poems, and the last one is O Fortuna. I think this is part of that. I think that's what I use. Let me find this, and I'm going to play this for the audience. And this is this one here. Here you go. Oh. Here you go. And that was obviously during the pandemic. I see them. It's funny with the masks. Didn't seem, that little piece of cloth didn't seem to slow down the voices at all,
I was kind of pleasantly surprised listening back now with how the consonants cut through.
Yeah.
We did that because, well, twofold. One, Dr. McCorvey really wanted the organization to start recording more, which I think is important. And we did do a recording of Thy Will Be Done at an Easter oratorio by Angela Rice, and that is commercially available. I sang Mary Magdalene on that. But other than that, we don't have many recordings, and recording at Lincoln Center is cost prohibitive. So during the pandemic, we thought, what can we do safely? So we kind of got in a room, we had masks on, and we recorded Carmina Burana, and we recorded a few other pieces as well, so that we have something tangible. And then it was also something to do and to give people during the pandemic.
I see. And I know you also performed and recorded Mozart's Requiem. Was that at the same time during that same period?
That was. We had a couple of different days. So I don't remember if that was exactly at the same time that we did Carmina. The Carmina, you could see there wasn't an audience for. I think the Requiem, we actually did have an invited audience. So it was, I think, the first time for all of us to perform in front of people since things shut down.
Uh-huh. This is just another picture of the chorale doing this Requiem. And I do have a little video clip, and I think this is toward the end, the final section of the Requiem. So let me play this right now and comment after. Nice. Mozart, huh?
Yes, Mozart.
Wow.
One thing I wanted to point out about National Chorale before we move on is that you could see there were only about 40 singers there, but it was a lot of sound. And the unique thing about National Chorale is that not only is it an all professional chorus, but it's made up of soloists. So any singer could step out and be the soloist or step back into the choir, which I think is pretty rare. A lot of those singers actually have sung at the Metropolitan Opera. Kenneth Overton, who is one of the soloists for the Mozart, he's a Grammy Award winner. So it's pretty large voices in that ensemble, which is really special to sing with.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's awesome. So you left New York after several years there, and I guess it was just after the pandemic or during the pandemic in that period of time, because of course things were slow everywhere, but you moved back to Pittsburgh, to your hometown, and you had the opportunity to sing the national anthem at both the Pirate games and the Pittsburgh Riverhounds soccer team games, right?
Yes. So I never thought I'd leave New York, but in March of 2020, March 16th to be exact, I came home at my family's begging, thinking I'd be home for 2 weeks, and I never went back to my apartment. Things were shut down for so long. So I've been here ever since, and I've started doing a lot of national anthems. So for professional teams, it's been the Pirates and the Riverhounds. And then I've done a lot of collegiate teams and other events as well.
And then eventually and we'll talk about this later, but you also then connected with the Mendelssohn Choir of Pittsburgh, which is kind of not maybe the equivalent, but similar to being in the National Chorale in New York,
Yes.
It's probably the highest rated vocal choral group in professionally in Pittsburgh. So that, at least he took advantage of that as well. So when you came back, I have a picture. I want to show this. There you go. And you're right in PNC Park. It's a beautiful park. And then this picture here, you're singing as well, and that's with the Riverhounds. So you did both of those. And I have a video of you singing the national anthem here.
We ask all those who are able to please rise and remove your caps. To perform our national anthem, please welcome Gina Morgano.
Let's go, Bucks. Huh? Very good. So that kept you busy doing all these national anthems and things. And then in 2018, you performed the Roots of Steel benefit concert. Tell us about that. And I do have a photo. I think this is the photo here. You sing. Yeah.
So that came about. It was a fundraiser for the congregations that were affected by the Tree of Life tragedy here in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And I had done a fundraiser for Our Lady of Victory, which is one of the churches that I grew up going to. They have a World War II memorial statue, and I had raised some funds to restore that statue. And with my experience doing that fundraising concert and doing all of my recitals and my cabarets, I kind of thought, well, why don't we do something to help? Let's put on a concert to help raise some money. And somebody who actually went to one of the congregations who was living in New York also had that thought, and a mutual friend connected us. Samantha Harris was the girl I co-produced with, and we had a couple of other co-producers as well. And so we put that together in 2 months exactly. And it was at Carnegie Music Hall here in Pittsburgh. There are a lot of different Carnegie music halls. So this was the Pittsburgh one. And we actually had Billy Porter MC it. And we had an all-star cast. We had Broadway people such as Will Reynolds and Sarah Jean Ford. We had local Broadway talent like Billy Hartung. And we also had an auction And so many people in the city participated. We had all the major sports teams, all the major cultural organizations. We had a lot of small businesses participate. Everyone was just so generous and really rallied together. And we were able to raise over $75,000 that night. And what we didn't tell people at the time was that in addition to raising money, one of our main purposes for doing that concert was actually to provide an evening of hope for the survivors. So we didn't tell people, but actually the survivors were all in attendance, and it was really for them.
Oh, that's interesting. That's wonderful. Well, that's great. And so that was a picture of you singing in that, for that performance, for that fundraiser, huh?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I actually, that was a song called Something Beautiful by Stephen Flaherty, who is a Pittsburgher. He went to Seton LaSalle High School. His musical Ragtime is currently on Broadway, playing at Lincoln Center. And he was so generous to donate to the auction. We had a beautiful vinyl of Once on This Island. And that song was actually about someone who was impersonating a tree. And not impersonating, but it was from the perspective of a tree and talking about, you know, going through time and withstanding things and having that strength and resilience and observing the beauty around. So that was really appropriate for the occasion.
For sure, for sure. That's great. So besides your current online voice studio, you did some teaching online at the Professional Performing Arts School in New York, as well as the Oakland Catholic School in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Tell us briefly about those experiences.
Yes. So PPAS was when I was in New York working as an artist teacher with National Chorale. And then when the pandemic happened, we took everything online for a year. So I was teaching in Pittsburgh, but I was physically present in Pittsburgh, but I was teaching in New York.
Okay.
And then I had actually pre-pandemic did a little bit of online teaching on my own. And I also am on voice faculty at the 92nd Street Y in New York, and I taught classes with them. So during the pandemic, I was teaching a lot of online classes with them. And then when things opened up, I taught in person for a year as the music teacher at Oakland Catholic High School here in Pittsburgh. And then I decided after that year that I really preferred to be on my own. So that's when I opened my small private studio that's on my own. And I still teach online because most of my students are not local. If they are local, they're welcome to come here to my home studio, but most of them are in New York. I have a student in Chicago, one in Oklahoma. I've had clients in Australia. So I'm still teaching online and I love it. There's pros and cons to both, but I really enjoy it.
And tell me about your podcast that you do called the Voice Space Podcast, formerly the Practice Parlor. Tell us about that.
Sure. So that started as a pandemic project. I was missing having conversations with people. I was looking for a creative outlet, and I started a podcast called The Practice Parlor. And initially it was all interviews, just like Your Memories of a Musician. And I changed the name last season. We're in season 5. So it's been 2 seasons of The Voice Space. And now it's mostly solo episodes. I do have occasional guests on, but it's a podcast that is all about the voice. And it's meant to be a space to discuss all things pertaining to expression and the creative life. So I recently had an episode that was very practical. It was about TMJ and jaw tension. But then there are other episodes that are much more about the voice metaphorically and simply how you're expressing yourself more openly and more expansively in all aspects of your life, not only singing.
You're talking about the podcast and shifting gears a little bit. I thought about, I should just have just accordion players, but then I thought that would only last about a month. It'd be over. So that's funny. So we're going to go to a different direction altogether, because we're going to talk about Gina Morgano and Friends, which, you know, some of your friends are my friends too. And Ken is playing bass, Ken Kovac, and I see you have Greg Grenick, and he was with my band for like 30 years. You know, he's my sax player. And then Kevin Clark, who you know, I think I met Kevin in person the first time at your mom's and Kenny's wedding. But, you know, he was a guest on my show. And so Greg was a guest on my show. Ken was a guest on my show already. So I know a lot. But you know, it's nice because you're stretching into a different realm kind of altogether, right? From you, especially from these choral experiences, singing with Mendelssohn, singing with the National Chorale, and, you know, your classical background and things. And I think you do a wonderful job. This is just my opinion, but on Broadway musical style, I think is a very, very strong point for you. And now you're doing kind of, you know, more a jazz pop, kind of a blend of the two with this. And I do have a photo I want to show. And this was from a Christmas program. You see the Christmas tree behind. And actually the drummer there is Vince Taglieri. And he's a future guest on the show, I think sometime in maybe August or September, August, I think maybe, but or September. But anyhow, Vince is going to be on the show. He's your drummer, and there's Ken playing bass. You're in the middle, Kevin Clark playing keys, and Greg with the upside down tenor saxophone. he is a trip, that's for sure. He's a great musician and a great player. And a great guy too. We've had a wonderful musical life together, really. So I have this photo, and then I have a little video that I want to play. And this is you singing. I think the song is Almost Like Being in Love. Let's watch. Very nice. And so let me ask you a quick question. So what do you see the difference of singing, you know, classical music or singing with a choir and being one part of a whole thing, as opposed to being right there singing, you know, being the star, the soloist, right?
That's a great question. So I think on one hand, when you're with a choir, everything has to be very exact and precise. Your cutoffs have to be precise. You have to breathe together. You have to have your consonants in just the right way. You have to pronounce your words exactly the same all the way across. You are listening to each other and blending your voice, giving as much as it's called for, or kind of holding back as much as it's called for. And when you are the soloist, you have a lot more freedom to kind of do your thing, right? You don't really have to answer to anybody else. Of course, you are collaborating and listening to the other musicians around you, but there is a lot more flexibility, if you will. You are in charge as opposed to following the conductor.
You're the only voice, right? You're the only voice.
But also there's the style of it. So there's a lot of different musical styles. I mean, I sing a lot of classical choral music, sacred choral music, but we recently did a jazz piece with Wynton Marsalis. But with Gina Morgano and friends, those are all jazz guys.
Yeah.
So it was really intimidating for me at first, and I get more comfortable the more I do it, but not to have everything exactly prescribed for me, having to cut out and give them musical breaks and solos, and then knowing when to come back in and maybe changing up the melody here and there rhythmically or melodically. It was, the improvisation of it all is kind of disconcerting for a classical singer.
Yeah. Have you done any scatting where you trade fours with Greg or with Kevin? You know what I'm saying? That's your
Not
next,
really.
that'll be your next step.
Yeah.
Start scatting, and then you can trade fours with the other musicians, right?
Right.
Oh,
I
yeah.
did a little bit in one of my New York shows. We did an arrangement with piano only of No Doubt Spiderwebs, and it was sort of a jazzy arrangement of that song. And I tried scatting a little bit in there. It was very intimidating. So it's on my list of things to learn how to do.
It's you know what? You have to, with jazz, differently than like classical, and you described it very well when you talked about your role in a choir versus being a soloist. But with that jazz idiom, you have to dive in with both feet and both hands, and just I've heard this many times throughout my life. You have to sound bad before you can sound good. You have to take that risk, and it's gonna be a little bit goofy at first. That's why they say if you start when you're really young, improvising and doing that when you're really young, it's a lot easier than if you become a polished musician and you're used to playing everything perfectly, and then all of a sudden you're going to learn how to improvise. It's brutal, because you have to forget all of the things that you've learned to be able to play precisely, and it's a different thing. But you know what? Yeah, you can do it. You can do it. You have it. So I want to ask you about this whole TEDx speaking world that you jumped into, which is something that I think you do very well too. You are involved as a TEDx speaker, and TED stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. And if you have the X, it means that you're doing this on your own, I guess. You might have a better explanation. Is that close?
Sort of. So TED is a major conference that they do, major days of speaking, and that is the umbrella organization. And then TEDx allows independent organizations to host their own TED events. So the one that I did was hosted by Point Park University.
Okay. And so I have a little video, and now again, this video, of course, was like an hour long or something, that you gave this speech at Point Park. And I just, it was just a short clip to let people see what it's about.
A friend recently texted me to say that she finally made a doctor's appointment that she had been putting off for weeks and weeks. She wasn't procrastinating on making this appointment because she was too busy. And it wasn't because she was afraid of her health, scared of what the doctor might say. She waited to make the appointment because she was too afraid to speak to someone on the phone in order to make the appointment. As her friend, I thought, what on earth? It's important to stay on top of your doctor's appointments. But as a voice teacher, this is what I encounter every single day. People are afraid to use their voices. And I can relate, because as a huge introvert, I cringe a little when I have to step outside of my comfort zone and speak with strangers. And there have been many times, both on stage and off, when I have hesitated to use my voice. But it wasn't always this way. When we are born, what is the first thing that we do? We cry. We take a breath, and that allows us to make sound, and that sound allows us to connect with other human beings. Have you ever noticed that a baby never gets hoarse? It cries and cries at the top of its lungs without a care in the world. It does whatever it takes to make its needs known, to let everyone know of its presence without apology or shame. It is loud and bold. We inherently know how to use our voices well. But somewhere along the way, we get blocked. Life fills us with self-doubt and insecurity. We become inhibited and lose our confidence. So people come to me knowing that they have a voice within them. They want to learn how to sing better, how to vocally express more freely. But they feel blocked. And so it's my job to help them get unblocked. As a voice teacher, as a professional singer, as a voice confidence coach, and as a human being, there are 3 things that I've learned that help to renew your voice from the inside out. Take it 1 breath at a time, dare to be heard, reach out, and connect. Together, we can give voice to a cause, a marginalized group, an idea worth spreading, a message that needs to be shared. Like actors in a play or singers in a choir, every voice has a role to play, a phrase to sing, a line to share. Every voice matters. Thank you for taking the time today to listen to my voice. And thank you to TEDx and Point Park University for hosting this event. I'd like to remind you that your voice matters. Love it and use it with courage. Thank you.
That's easier said than done.
For sure.
Yeah, and I'm a victim of that too. Like it's interesting because, like you said, when we're born, we're born with a natural ability to use our voice, but then somewhere along the line, you become very, shy with it. It's part of just, I don't know, it's personality or I don't know, but I was always happy to sing like folk music because folk music is something that everybody on the street sings, right? Or everybody in the town or the village sings. You don't have to be a polished singer to sing folk music, just have fun, have a glass of wine and drink and then sing, it's fun. But then when I would go beyond that and try to sing a pop tune or something like that, forget about it. Just as well as I played music, that's how badly I felt that I was a vocalist. And confidence is big. And I remember Greg Grenick, Greg because he played sax for you. And, when he came with me, he didn't sing at all. And little by little, he started singing and he became what I would consider to be a lead vocalist. And he sang very, very well. And I remember him telling me, "John, it's just confidence. You gotta put it right out there on the line. Well, he was able to do that way far better than myself. That's for sure. But this is another area with this TEDx, and I give you a lot of credit because first of all, you're very good at it. But secondly, it's you're talking about your voice experience, but you're really not singing. It's not a singing performance, it's a different world. So very good and congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So let's talk about the Mendelssohn Choir. And I have a photo, this photo here, this was in that opening montage too. And this is the whole choir, right?
Yes, that was from one of our retreats. At the beginning of every season, we get together and we have a retreat day. So I think that was from maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay. Yeah, that's a cool picture. It's nice how they got everybody in there and can see everybody. And how long have you been with them?
This is my 5th season.
Okay. I figured it was about 5 years. Yeah.
Yes. I started with them when they started back up after their pandemic hiatus.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Very good. And it's so great that you've had the opportunity to sing with your backup band is the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra. I mean, come on. Really?
It's amazing. That
Yeah.
symphony is so incredible. I just sit there and watch them and listen to them, and I am in complete awe. They're amazing.
Yeah. I think if I were in that choir, I would be doing the same. I wouldn't be singing. I'd be just listening to the orchestra. That's just the nature of things. So I have one more video I want to show. And this one, we're going back to the National Chorale. And it's actually a 9/11 video that was put together. Tell us about what we're going to see.
So this was the 20th anniversary of 9/11, and it was the New Jersey Remembrance Ceremony. So they had Senator Cory Booker was there and he spoke. They had the man who ran the water taxi, who was running all the actual rescues on 9/11. They had a survivor speak. It was the official New Jersey ceremony. And we were actually supposed to be at Ground Zero, but they didn't have the physical space for the chorus. So they moved us to the New Jersey ceremony. And that was with the U.S. Army Field Band and Soldiers Chorus. So it was really moving and special.
This is wonderful. Let me play this video here. Okay.
Oh, say, can you see I'm
There you go. Wow. Very nice. I have a question. It's just a personal thing. So the maestro is conducting and he's using a baton. Traditionally, historically, most choral directors do not use a baton. They just use their hands. I mean, my experience of seeing many college and high school choirs and things. Now, I was wondering if he used the baton because when he, in all these cases, he's had an orchestra besides the choir. Have you ever seen him conduct a choir where it was just maybe piano accompaniment without the baton, or does he always use the baton?
I don't recall. I feel like he mostly uses the baton. And actually, I don't think I've noticed which conductors use a baton and which use their hands until you just mentioned it now. I'm thinking of the Mendelssohn Choir and our music director, Daniel Singer, and he conducts with his hands. And I'm thinking of different conductors like Manfred Honeck with the symphony does usually use a baton. So it could be choral orchestral, but I don't know. Now I'll have to start paying attention.
Well, yeah. Orchestra and band conductors all use batons. I mean, now it's the opposite. Occasionally you'll find someone conducting an orchestra without a baton, occasionally, but that's the rarity, right? And I think it's a rarity that you're using a baton with a choral group. I could see it with the fact that he's having a full orchestra, involved as well. I don't know. I just curious about that,
Yeah, now I'm curious too.
Well, Gina, it has been wonderful having you on the program, and you've had a great career so far. I hope it continues and you keep taking advantage of every opportunity that comes your way. Right?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on Memories of a Musician. Thank you for all of the support that you give me in my life and in my career. I really appreciate it.
Well, you're quite welcome. It's been a pleasure. And thank you for all you've done for Memories of a Musician, too. We appreciate that.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, you have a great evening, and we'll talk with you soon.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye. And there you go, another episode of Memories of a Musician with Gina Morgano. Very talented young lady. I mean, she covers a lot of bases, not just singing in choirs and solos, but as you saw, in a speaking role, in a journalism role where she's helped me, not even with just this podcast, but a lot of the written parts of my symphony when I was doing descriptions and things like that. I would always run things by her. So wonderful to know her and to have her in my corner, so to speak, there. But she's done a great job of everything that she does. Now, looking ahead, my next podcast is going to be on June 24th. And I'm going to take a little hiatus, and I'm going to tell you why. My wife and I are going to leave soon to go to our hometown of Pittsburgh. Of course, we live in Naples, Florida, but we're going to go back to Pittsburgh because our oldest grandchildren, they're twins, Nico and Mia, are graduating from high school. And we're going up for all the festivities that surround the end of their senior year and their graduation and the parties and the family get-togethers and all those things. So we're very excited about that. And it's kind of hard for me to believe how fast time goes. And there's an old song, "Time waits for no one." Sometimes I'm going to have to play that song on this podcast, but it's true. That clock keeps ticking no matter what. And I can remember holding these twins in my arms not more than an hour after they were born. And now in August, they're going to be leaving for college, both of them in different directions, but colleges. So it's amazing to me how fast the time really goes. And this is going to give me an opportunity to spend some time with all my family, both Lana's family, my family, everybody we have up there in the next few weeks. My next podcast, as I said, is going to be on Wednesday, June 24th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And my special guest for that evening is another, actually former student of mine. His name is Zach Wiesinger, also known as Guitar Zach. He's a terrific guitar player, and you're gonna learn a lot about Zach and what he does and his guitar playing. And I remember when, at the time that he was a senior in high school, I was a member of NARAS, the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences, and I used to vote. And this is in the late 90s, early 2000s. I voted for about 5 or 6 years for the Grammys. And, of course, I got all the information, anything to do with the Grammys. And they have a Grammy camp in the summer. And I suggested that Zach go to this Grammy camp, and he did. And there he met Steve Vai, who's internationally known guitarist. I played with Frank Zappa and all kinds of people. And he had a solo career as well. And he liked Zach so much that he had him come and live in California at his home and do some work for him. But he also took him on tour to Europe. And Zach was the opening act for Steve Vai all through his European tour. So Zach's going to be on the program on June 24th. We're going to have a good evening that night as well. And I would encourage you to join Tony Janflone Jr. He does his podcast on Tuesdays at 7 o'clock, Toneful Tuesdays. And he has a really nice list of guests on his program. And I was episode number 8. And if you haven't seen it, he only has his podcast only on YouTube, and he has his YouTube channel. If you just look up Tony Janflone Jr. and Toneful Tuesdays, you'll find his podcast, and you'll see my podcast as well. And if you haven't seen it, I would recommend. He did a great job, and I was the interviewee instead of the interviewer that for that particular night. So if you get a chance, tune in. And Tony does a great job. He's a great musician. He was a guest on my program months ago. You have a nice hiatus here from Memories, and we'll tune back in June 24th, and we'll look forward to seeing you then. Thank you for joining me. You have a great evening.